Rob, welcome back. You feeling refreshed, ready to go?
Yeah, happy New Year. It's been a little while, but this is going to be such a great year. So I'm pumped. I'm refreshed, and I'm raring to go.
Well, we're off to a good start. I think things are looking bright, and we have pretty big news hitting on a regular basis, but we also have a lot of questions coming from the community. The first one comes from Tom Vega. He actually has three he wants you to tackle. First, the transition from the HBAR Foundation to the Hedera Foundation, that process. Second, the impact of spheres on Hedera TPS, revenue generation, etc. And third, if enterprises go with private hash graphs, so those spheres, then maybe governance needs to evolve to include more retail business. So to start off, Rob, those second two kind of work together. You in the past have said that those private iterations probably don't have as much traction as people might think, and that it doesn't make as much sense as a public network in most instances. More recently, you've been saying that you can see some places where it might fit, but what are your general thoughts around it?
Yeah, well, let's tackle those two first then. What I previously said is that private blockchains hadn't got the traction over the years. So 2014, 2015, we had Hyperledger Fabric, IBM blockchain. And the big use cases such as Walmart and Maersk and others. And didn't really, the bang for the buck just wasn't there. It was too complicated to manage a consortium of node operators, and most of them, if not all of them, have fallen by the wayside. Where hash spheres is different, and what Hashgraph are trying to do, and we're talking to them, on a daily basis from an AP Plus perspective about how it might fit. So I'm kind of across a lot of the what they're seeking to do with hash spheres is providing firstly, it's the same stack, right? So people who are familiar with Hedera mainnet and maybe have been contributing to Hyro or participating in the open source, it's just the same, but it's a private instance of that. So there's this familiarity, the same tooling, the same or similar kind of endpoints and APIs. So that's different from the past. That's different from having to implement an entirely different type of private blockchain. And the way it's being pitched is that enterprise largely are still not ready for a full Web3 experience. And there's still many reasons around data security and confidentiality and privacy that are inhibiting that leap of faith that enterprises feel they need to take in order to go the whole way into a full kind of public ledger world. But transitionally from current state into what's referred to as Web 2.5, or just testing the waters, or legitimately delivering tokenization, private versions of a tokenization use case, either within existing business use cases or entirely new ones. It makes it easier and simpler to transition through a private state. Now, many of those use cases will remain in that state, but many will actually transition out the other side into Web3, or they will have learned a lot and have moved forward. And in a world where regulators are doing about turns, 180-degree kind of turns, it would appear, led by the US over the next year or two, that may accelerate that progress into public ledgers. But I fully expect there to be many use cases which do just stick in the private ledger space, and that's okay too. I'm particularly interested in use cases that incorporate interoperability. So, being able to switch in and out of a spheres space from a public space that's useful for things like stable coins and other kind of tokens on the public ledger, which need to be transferred into the private spheres. So there's a lot going on. I know Lehman and his team are very focused on things like interoperability and interledger transitions of digital assets. So I'm hoping that we see quite a lot of movement this year as interest in that space picks up.
Do you think that that's going to have a negative impact or a positive impact on transaction volume and revenue?
I think I've said in the past, I think it's only positive. I don't think it robs or steals TPS from other use cases. I don't know of any enterprises that say, "Oh, we're not, we were going to build on the private on public ledger, but now we're going to build on private." It's just additive in terms of use cases. And then, of course, there's a kind of contributory factor of those new use cases in the private space onto the mainnet that needs securing. So, yeah, I don't believe that it's either or. It's entirely additive.
All right, makes sense. Now, what do you think of this transition from the HBAR Foundation to the Hedera Foundation under the new leadership of Charles?
Well, it's week 3. It appears that Charles is a lot more engaged in the social space. I'm seeing tweets from him, regularly. The whole sentiment around engagement with retail feels like it's changing. I mean, it's certainly changing in the meme coin space. And our favorite intern has had his shackles taken off. So we've got a lot of sentiment change, I think, at the right time. The rebranding to Hedera Foundation, I don't think has been enacted yet, but that's underway. If I were Charles, and I haven't spoken to him since Christmas, but if I were Charles, I would be getting my feet under the desk. I'd be working out with the leadership team the strategy. I'd be reorganizing according to that strategy, communicating to the entire team. And then it's off to the races. So I would anticipate a lot of things now kind of coming out as we move forward.
Yep, and I'm supposed to get Charles on next week to
Awesome.
have an interview, so I'm going to be able to ask directly from the horse's mouth there. So the next one,
I will be both seeing him, I think, in Denver next month. So I'm going to HederaCon. And on the 25th of February, hope to see you there for the first time in the flesh. And many of the community members who have told me they're going. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then that's co-located with East Denver. So there's a massive Web3 communities conference that Hedera is participating in as it always does. So yeah, we've got a lot to talk about next month. But I anticipate quite a few announcements between now and then.
And Karate Combat 52. I hope you can make it to that one as well.
Can you get me ringside tickets?
We can certainly get you VIP, I think.
Awesome.
We'll give it a shot. Either way. All right, so the next one comes from another Rob in Australia who says, "Hi, Rob. Just wanted to ask, why hasn't Hedera highlighted its indirect connection to SpaceX through the CLSQ YSAT launch that we had just last week?"
Well, as we saw last year, I think there are difficulties and bear traps all over the place for kind of indirect association with large companies that may or may not be aware of the announcement. So I think it's wise, no pun intended, wise not to have over-egged the announcement. Clearly, SpaceX was launched those WISE satellites. And it's a great news story in and of itself, right? So we should focus on the amazing things that Carlos and the WISE team have done. Every announcement that comes out from Carlos, from the Hashgraph Association, which is largely supporting all of the WISE key and WISE sat use cases, always mention Hedera. So there's plenty going on there. Of course, it would probably give a little bit of a boost. Again, no pun intended, if SpaceX was, tagged in all of those as well. But I honestly think that the news stands on its own. And unfortunately, with everything else, the furore and the noise in the space at the moment is probably gone a little bit under the radar. But we've got Carlos in Davos this week. There's more announcements coming out. We've got the SEAL and SEAL-SQ announcements coming up. So I don't think the story has run its course yet. There's plenty of time to amplify it, and the community is doing a great job amplifying it too, and as are you. So I don't know that we need some vicarious Elon Musk or SpaceX association that may or may not exist.
It's the kind of stuff that Elon would probably pay attention to, and obviously he knows who Carlos is. But I just like how CLSQ is just kind of heads down and doing what they need to do. They just came out with those smart meters in the UK. There's supposed to be 26 million that they're going to be putting out there. And, that's what we want to see. We want to see that technology integrated into as many objects as possible. And hopefully we can get those connected and transacting between one another using Hedera and their seal coin here in the future. Exciting stuff either way. Like you said, it stands on its own.
It really does, and it's easy to get caught up in the hype and the memes and everything else around this, and in the Web3 space in particular. But we must remember that there are real world use cases being developed on Hedera and rapidly accelerating. There was a space just this morning on DeepIn and AI. Those are really, really core themes for this year, and Hedera is incredibly well placed for both of them, as well as sustainability and all the others we talk about.
I couldn't agree more. All right, so the next one comes from Hedera Staking, who asks, is the governing council waiting for stablecoin regulation or FIT21 to flip the TPS switch?
No. The governing council, it governs. Has a job to do, and which is very well laid out in the LLC agreement. There's a great interest in things like FIT21, which is the Financial Innovation and Technology for the 21st Century Act in the US. But we're a global governing council. The specific members within the governing council are aligned with either specific jurisdictions or multi-jurisdictional legislation, regulation where they operate. The US is one of the biggest markets in the world, of course, and many of the regulators of the world, look to the US, and especially at the moment, to take notes for how to inform their own policies. But the governing council doesn't really need to flip anything, to be honest. The stablecoin space is super hot. I mean, white hot. My own interests, as you know, are in payments, and stablecoins are the new payment rails. And so many of the governing council members are very keenly interested in what these new payment rails, new ways of doing commerce, the liquidity within our ecosystem, and the kinds of digital asset that bear a kind of currency like stablecoins. So yes, of course, we're very, very interested in those things, but we're not waiting. There's no point waiting. And each of the use cases that each of the governing council are working on, may or may not have aspects of stablecoins within them. So yeah, there's no waiting.
All right, fair enough. So Matt HBAR says the token release schedule has been updated. Any details about the use of these funds? What will happen if we get to 100% release before the network is sustainable by itself? I think this is a great question.
It does. I'll come to the second part of the question just to clarify a few things. So the Treasury Management Report gets released every quarter, I think. And it updates the allocation from the HBAR Treasury. So we don't talk about circulating supply from a governing council perspective, because this is largely subjective in the Web3 space, and and circulating supply and its kind of lead into things like market cap or coin market cap type calculations is not consistent. However, it's not consistent across all of the chains, and what is meant by circulation. So we tend to talk about allocated and unallocated supply of HBAR from the Treasury, and then released supply and unreleased supply within the allocated supply. So what we've increased, and mostly because of this governance reform that we've gone through with Charles moving to the foundation, and the allocation of HBAR as part of that move. So allocating HBAR is about earmarking it from the unallocated supply, and then releasing it, which is what happens when the ecosystem partners, such as the Foundation, Hashgraph Association, Hashgraph itself, use that allocated supply and release it, to pay for salaries or to provide grants or to, do whatever else it has been agreed that they're going to use it for. So the released element is what could be considered akin to circulating supply. That's kind of clear. And according to the most recent Treasury Management Report, we have almost all the HBAR Treasury allocated, i.e. earmarked for particular tasks, which may be 10 years hence. I understand the foundation has large reserves of what has been previously allocated as well. So there are just because these allocations have been made doesn't mean they've been spent, and therefore there's no dilutive effect. It's just that they're it's been kind of put into different pots and will be then distributed subsequently. So we are a very long way from a full release, full distribution, which is what I think the questioner was alluding to. So, when all of the HBAR has been distributed and released and, is in wider circulation, we're ways off that. Even at 5 cents, we were years away, and now, between 30 and 40 cents, and then potentially, in the very near future, higher. That extends that runway by, significantly. So it is true to say we have to be completely, I guess, revenue generating and as a network, and we have to have massive usage, and I believe that is coming. So like I said, we've got years. It's not something that we ignore at all. We've got sufficient runway to get to that point where Hedera is flying. We've got revenue and usages through the stratosphere, and I'm not particularly worried about that at all.
Well covered, well covered. All right, so HBAR $10 says, Rob, the Asset Tokenization Studio has been out for a while now. How has it been received by the industry? Are there any anecdotes you can share?
The Asset Tokenization Studio is awesome. We obviously have Red Swan, who were a partner in its development. So that's that. As far as I know, is the only live production use of the studio right now. But I spoke to Greg Scullard on this particular question yesterday, and he said that they've got active conversations with a number of parties. They've because it's not fully open sourced yet, they have to provide access to the GitHub registries, and so they know how many projects have been it's been released to, and that's in the order of dozens. The templates at the moment are very US focused, so equities and bonds, etc. So there's quite a lot of interest from other parts of the world that are seeking to add their own security templates or tokenization templates into the studio. So that work's underway as well. There are quite a few conversations. I spoke to other people I know who in the ecosystem. There are quite a few conversations with service providers that are looking to create a kind of a Studio Pro, so taking the open source and then developing it on themselves, which of course is the whole purpose of providing open source. So that's quite an interesting advancement from the use of the Tokenization Studio too. So I think the TLDR there is that there's a lot of interest. These sorts of token platforms take some time to bring to market, and the Token Studio is one of these accelerators that Hashgraph and its partners release from time to time, like Stablecoin Studio. And they're intended really to accelerate the development, the product for third parties. So I think we should probably anticipate quite a few of these in the next 12 months, but that's where we are at the moment.
All right, fair enough. So HBRA asks, can Rob tell us more about who's taking over for Charles' role at Hedera? What's their plan? Will anything change? For example, stylistic changes to running an organization, etc. Now, we've had plenty of questions about Charles and what he's going to be doing at the Hedera Foundation, but we haven't talked about, how he's going to be replaced and how his role is going to be replaced within Hedera. How's that going?
Yeah, so it's been announced that Tom Sylvester is the interim president. Tom has been working at the LLC for as long as I can remember, certainly 4 or 5 years, I believe, and he's the general counsel. So, Tom is a thoroughly nice guy, super smart, and has actually been involved in pretty much all of the legal agreements and general counsel work for Hedera LLC for many years. So he's been appointed by the board. We've just got a new board as well. So our governance reforms from last year were enacted at the end of December, and there'll be more announcements about that. And that board has appointed Tom Sylvester as the interim president. What that does in terms of style, I suspect very little. It's kind of a steady as you go kind of organization. The LLC is a very small team that is there to service the operations of the governing council. It's not a high profile role. I think Charles has got far better fit with his new role in the foundation because he's a large profile, and with a big remit, he can do so much more in the foundation. Whereas the LLC team are, like I said, there to service the governing council. The interim role, I have no more information about the intention of the Hedera board in terms of extending that, nor Tom's own interest in doing so. But it certainly buys us time if the board is seeking to hire another president or change the role itself. So, yep, I welcome Tom. He's like I said, he's a thoroughly nice guy. I talk to him quite a lot, and he's always very responsive to the governing council members, and I think he'll be great in the role.
All right, good to know. So next up, we have Bitcoin Conspiracy Theory, who asks, does Rob expect any big news to come out of Davos? So, Rob, we know that Davos is a really good place to be able to announce big things. Carlos, again, from CLSQ and YSAT, he was talking about some big announcements there. But do you know of anything else that might be coming out around Hedera at Davos?
Well, as we record this today, we've had the first couple of days of Davos. Hedera's not there this year in the same way it has been over the last couple of years, with the big hotel rental and the big banners. But we're still there. We're still sponsoring events. The Hashgraph Association is doing quite a lot there. Sustainable Impact Fund and Wes and the team are there, as they always are, because sustainability is a big agenda item always at Davos. So, we've had a few announcements. There's obviously Carlos has been talking about WiseKey, and that was pretty good. Although it was the Hedera joining the Decentralized AI Society was announced.
That's right.
That was announced just last week, but in kind of combination with Davos as well, joining the NEAR Foundation and the Secret Network on that. So, yet another data point really about Hedera's move into the AI space thematically this year. And, for the rest, typically we haven't had big announcements during Davos week. So if you look at the last couple of years, I can't remember any big new governing council member or any other big announcement. It's largely about engaging with the world's business leaders and all the events that are there, and making sure that Hedera is known and front and center when people are talking about emerging tech and the application of that tech. So it's being done in a slightly different way this year, but we are still there and entirely legitimately from my perspective.
Yeah, it's more about conversations and getting the ball rolling on things than necessarily the big announcements. That'll come a little bit later.
Yeah, and Charles told me that he had something like 300 new contacts out of last year. So, it's really important to be at these events and at least have the side meetings and the corridor conversations, and for the logo to be seen, and that can be done in many different ways. So, yeah, it would be a shame not to be involved in any shape or form, but we evolve our approach every year.
Sure. Try different things. That's a good strategy. So I have two from NASA asking, first, do you expect a full governing council by the end of the year? We've already talked about that, but I think it's good to address again. People are interested in it, so might as well hit it up again. And second, he states the governing council minutes are taking too long to be published. What happened? Wow, they're demanding out here, Rob. But
yeah, I think if one makes promises, then if you can't follow through, then it's legitimate to respond to the questions, and the minutes haven't been. I think the minutes from September and October are about to be released. There was some delays on getting them signed off. So the process is always the minutes of a governing council meeting are circulated in draft and then brought to a subsequent governing council meeting for approval. If there's quorum, then it's done there. If there is no quorum, then it's done via an e-ballot. So September and October, I think, have just achieved that and will be released it's usually within 30 days of that being achieved. And then we've got November and December, which I believe is coming to the council for approval. So, the minutes will be released imminently for those that have been approved and signed off. In terms of the governing council, well, it's a perennial question. I'm always called out on it. I was called out on it last week on X for something I don't think I said, but just to be very clear, we're in sight of filling the council. We've got a very strong pipeline. There are some great candidates in that pipeline, but the timing of the announcements are completely out of our hands because our market integrity policy requires us not to know these things. But the process is MEMCOM does all the heavy lifting and preparatory work and interviews. They, if the potential governing council member wants to proceed past that, MEMCOM votes and provides recommendations to the governing council, which then comes to the next governing council for a vote. Once the vote has been made, then that member has to fulfill a number of obligations and is in entire control of the timing of the announcement because they're almost all exchange-listed businesses, and therefore market reporting has to be tightly controlled for them. So they do that. And are we going to fill it in 2025? The MEMCOM lead.
You said you were hopeful.
The MEMCOM leadership is standing by its strong pipeline, and I fully anticipate us being there or very close to being there in 2025. Yeah. You heard it here first.
Love to hear it. Love to hear it. All right. So HBAR Al says, what are the plans considering regulations coming? Are there any specific actions taken by Hedera? So because this regulatory environment has changed, has that changed the posture or how you're discussing things in the council?
Yeah, I mean, the risk posture has changed. It's been changing for a year. We took advice in Singapore over a year ago that advised that things like our super risk averse risk posture vis-a-vis the old guard and the SEC and Gary Gensler, may he rest in peace, has changed. And so for most of last year, this is with in conjunction with Charles coming in and Charles, advising from a Web3 perspective, a more retail perspective, that things can and should change over time. Obviously, now a lot of that has been enacted. We've got Charles leading the new foundation with a new remit. We talked earlier about sentiment change in the focus, or a pivot towards a greater level of focus on retail and the retail ecosystem, and that's all largely because of not regulatory clarity, because we don't have that yet, but a softening of in particular the US regulatory stance. In addition to that, we've got MiCA in Europe. We've got stronger and clearer regulation across the world, in particular in Singapore and Hong Kong, UK. So, the world is moving towards that. And of course, all of our governing council members are, operate within that world, and those who are more progressive in terms of looking at Web3 space and tokenization are definitely evolving both their perspective and their plans. The governing council as a whole is, we've got the great work that Nilmeni Rubin does on Capitol Hill and in DC and in advising us through the governing council in particular and the board, the Hedera board specifically. All of that changes our outlook all the time, and so this isn't an introverted organization. It's a very progressive organization that has to operate within the real world, within lots of risk structures that have to be considered. But absolutely, the governing council as a whole are more informed and the governing council voted on Charles's plan, which included him moving to the foundation and taking this greater retail outlook. So, we're entirely behind and very, very supportive of what that means in terms of the increased decentralization of the Hedera ecosystem and the adoption of a far greater retail focus.
Understood. So this is hard for me to say, because I was kind of pushing for a more aggressive stance, but it does seem like, at least in some areas, it's paid off, that risk adverse stance that Hedera had taken for a while. I don't know if you caught the interview I did last week with Bloomberg Intelligence and Eric and everything around what's happening with the ETF, but they're saying that because HBAR didn't get caught up in, any of the lawsuits or anything like that, that we're in a lot better position now to potentially get an ETF before even things like Solana and XRP. So it has on some fronts paid off.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's a balance, isn't it? We can all speculate on where we would be if we had done something differently in the past, but we are where we are. I think we're in a very good position, like we said now, in terms of coin market cap listing. We're in a cluster, right behind the leaders. So when I used to do my long distance running, that's where I like to position myself so that you can make a sprint for the line. If we can get that ETF in first, then everything changes. It really does. It will secure Hedera and HBAR as one of the preeminent cryptocurrencies in this entire space. So 2025 is going to be massive for Hedera, whatever happens.
Yeah, agreed. All right, so the last one comes from Hedarian, who says, this has been a strange beginning towards crypto regulation from the Trump empire. Did the Hedera team foresee this kind of behavior? Rob, I don't think anybody could have foreseen this kind of behavior. But Hedarian says, I'm now wondering how World Liberty Financial will play out. Who will benefit and who's pulling the strings? Now, Rob, I know that you probably don't have the inside track on all this kind of stuff, but you have been watching what's been going on lately. What are your thoughts?
Well, how can you not be watching? It's just incredible. I mean, the last few days, because we're recording on day 2, so the inauguration day was yesterday. I haven't even completed reading through all the executive orders that were signed in public overnight. So yeah, I mean, I really don't know. For the Trump family to be issuing meme coins 3 days before inauguration and then, playing the market and flexing like that is just on another level. So let's see. I mean, it certainly legitimizes meme coins, I think.
Could we have expected anything less? I mean, all kinds of crazy stuff. I hope they use some of the proceeds for some good causes out there. I think it would win them some political capital, because everybody thinks it's just a cash grab. I'm hoping that that's not the case, but it also throws an awful lot of cover for all the legitimate things out there. As long as it doesn't blow up too bad, I think we have a lot of good things ahead of us.
Yeah, I think just expect the unexpected with this new administration, and whatever happens, we've got a very, very different administration now with vis-a-vis the Web3 space. So those of us who have been around for a long time and have been quietly pushing forward, I think are going to have a very good year.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to. All right, Rob, that's all we have for you today. We appreciate everybody giving us your questions. If you have any additional questions on the Hedera ecosystem or the HBAR economy, go ahead and drop those down below. And Rob, we'll see you next week.
Thanks very much, Brandon. Great to be back.